Hey, we have a guest this morning that we all kind of know just a little bit, okay? Because she has belonged to the local fellowship, and she is a wife of one of our dear brothers. Mm-hmm. I've done music a lot with him, and I love him immensely. Mm-hmm. He writes little tunes, you know? His name is Brad. But, you know, we don't ever get to hear from the wife very often, who is Laurie Grooman. And she is our guest this morning, and she's written a book on Psalms 119. We're so glad to have her. Good morning, Laurie. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited to be on.
Oh, we're so glad you're on with us, Laurie.
Yeah, and from what I hear, you're all the way up in Seattle this morning, yes?
Yes.
So what are you doing up in Seattle? I mean, what do you do? Like, tell us a little bit about yourself, would you?
Okay, well, I am up here. I do a lot of traveling with my other job. I sell Hawaiian Moon Aloe Vera Skin Cream. It's an amazing product. It's a healing cream, and I love the cream. It takes care of just about any type of skin irritation. Mm-hmm. But we do a lot of travel, so I'm actually doing a medical show up in Seattle right now.
Wow. So you sell cream, and besides selling cream, you like to dabble into the scriptures just a little bit, yes?
Absolutely.
And from what
that is my passion.
yeah, well, I thought so. You know, we all have to do a little bit of work, you know, like Paul did tent making, right?
And Paul was a tent maker.
Yeah. And so here you've been given a little bit of a ministry, but you also do some work because we all have to eat, right? So you're selling the cream. So tell us about, we had received a note from Brad, your loving husband, who said, hey, my wife has finished a book, and it's on Amazon, and I'd like you to look it up. And so we did, and we immediately thought, well, let's get you on the show. So tell us about this book. I mean, what's it about? How did you get inspiration for it? And, just fill us in, would you?
Okay, well, the book is entitled How I Love Your Word, O Lord. It's a verse-by-verse devotional commentary on Psalm 119, verses 1 through 80. So I haven't finished the whole thing yet. I have 96 more verses to do. I have not begun to studying those yet. Mm-hmm. But as you know, Psalm 119 is the longest chapter in the Bible. The way Psalm 119 is structured is it goes through the Hebrew alphabet, 8 verses, with each 8 verses starting with the letter of the alphabet. So the first 8 verses start with Aleph. The verses 9 through 16 start with Beit, and then the next 8 verses start with Gimel. It goes all the way through. Awesome. All of it that way.
Yeah, Laurie, I've got a question for you. So you are working on a book, and you've got another 96 verses of Psalm or Tehillim 119. What drives your interest in Psalm 119?
Yeah, what's up with that?
Well, I had a little confession the other night at one of the Rev Shabbat meetings. What got me into this was, so my husband Brad was getting more involved in the Hebrew roots. So this is actually my sneaky way of studying Torah without studying Torah, because Psalm 119 is all about Torah.
Right.
And about the psalmist's love for Torah. And so, you know, it was just a way for me to, you know, what does the Bible say about the Bible, about the Torah? And so, you know, it was just, but then several years ago, I had heard, Brad and I had gone to a prophecy club meeting where Brad Scott was speaking, and he had gone over the fact that the meaning of the Hebrew words is encoded in its letters. And I just found that so fascinating. But I didn't know how to do it, how to break those words down at all, until I was in Hebrew Roots and Eric Bissell and David Klug's chart on the Hebrew alphabet. And so I began doing that, and we had Dr. Frank Seekin's Hebrew Word Picture book. And so I'd be looking at the letter meanings and just began, you know, to string them together, but also looking at the first few chapters of the book. I basically looked at the verses through the meaning of the first letter. And but then I began gaining a little bit more confidence in interpreting the words through their letter meanings. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did with the whole book, with the book. So, but just with the first word. So I feel like I'm scratching the surface.
So we're going to get just a little bit more personal with you. Is that okay?
That's perfectly fine.
Well, maybe we should check with Brad first, right?
Yeah.
No, but first, tell us. You had said a couple things, which was, number one, you wanted to connect with Brad just a little bit more and understand this movement sort of thing. And then also you had said you kind of started to understand that this Torah might be relevant, and you studied or wanted to listen to a couple other people and looked at their graphs. Where were you before? Were you a Christian, a non-Christian? I mean, what kind of got your interest into this idea of Torah and even wanting to connect with Brad a little bit more about the scripture stuff that he was getting into?
Okay, I came to Christ when I was 15.
Okay.
And that was back in 1977. So that was a long time ago.
Really?
And Brad and I, we always attended Sunday church, and I've studied scripture for years and years and years through different means, but I've never really, I've read through Torah, but I've never started observing the feast. I never really paid all that much attention to Torah.
When did you start observing the feast? Was that soon, or was that later, or what?
It was about 4 years ago.
Oh, so then you haven't.
Maybe a little longer.
So then you've been a Christian for a longer period of time, like from 15 to till when?
Yeah, so I came to Christ where I was born again in 1977. That's 38 years ago this July.
A long time ago.
You don't have to say it, but I am curious. Did you meet Brad at 15, and was Brad always like a hippie?
Just kidding. No, I met Brad. Brad and I met when we were actually studying with Wycliffe Bible translators at Summer Institute of Linguistics in Eugene at the University of Oregon.
Yes,
and
I know that place.
Yeah. So, and that was, we had both completed our bachelor's at that point, and met and started dating, and then got married, and so, but ministry had always been on our mind, on our forefront.
Like-mindedness within the mission field and the mission thoughts, and then you wanted to delve into more. I understand from listening is that both of you like to study, and you kind of wanted to get into the Word. But it was just about 4 years ago you started to keep the feast, and you come into more understanding. When did you actually start this book? Was it at the same time, or is it more recent, or?
It was actually about 4 years ago. It was like I started right around 4th of July of 2011, and it was just. And one of the things over the years I've developed a writing style that is. I've gone back and reread my stuff, and it's like, wow, this is really good. So, and I don't want to toot my horn there, but in the Bible studies that I've been a part of, the Lord has always given me insight that has propelled me, and there's just so much that I gleaned from study. And then with the writing, it was I have been wanting to write a book for a while. So everything just kind of came together, and when I began studying Psalm 119, it was more for personal study, but it was also the formation of the book. And as I pursued that, I wrote it as chapters as I was studying. So,
wow, that's pretty amazing. It seems like your linguistic background really played into that, huh, Laurie?
Yeah. So for me, one of the things I have is there's a real sensitivity to language in general. During my college years, I studied Koine Greek at a secular university, and that played into it. The linguistics played into it, and then studying Hebrew. And I'm just a novice in Hebrew, but being able to break down the words through the meaning of the letters. And that's pretty much all I know right now.
Yeah, it's amazing. Such a blessing Hebrew is, and I'm the same way.
You can find that on Amazon.com.
Right. How I Love Your Word, O Lord, a verse-by-verse devotional commentary on Psalm 119, 1 through 80. Or the short version is you Google Laurie Grooman and Psalm 119, and it pops up.
That's right. And we have Laurie on with us today, and she's going to tell us a little bit about this devotional and how it can help you out in your walk with the Father. So good morning again, Laurie. We are so glad to have you on. And this is a blessing for everyone. And we're excited to see this out. And we're excited to see someone local helping everyone out. I mean, this is awesome. So why did you do a devotional? Let's get into that, okay? Why a devotional and why not just some sort of heavy-duty teaching book?
It's a devotional commentary.
Okay.
And I don't know that I've ever really seen a devotional commentary. So
what is that? What is a devotional commentary? Help us out. I mean, because we're just guys.
That's the term that I came up with. It's not strictly commentary. I actually have some jokes in here. I insert myself into the book. I tell stories of both my childhood and different aspects of my life. There's illustrations, there's stories, there's a couple of jokes, but there's also looking at what the meaning of a word, developing that, thinking along those terms. It's not just strictly commentary. So there is devotional aspect to it.
Boy, I think that's great because I know for each of us sitting here, the three, quote, wise guys. I don't know. I keep questioning that. Yeah. But, we learn in different ways, don't we?
Yeah.
We learn kinesthetically or by doing. We learn orally. We learn visually. And it sounds like the way you've written this really addresses a lot of different ways to learn. I'm really looking forward to getting this.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely get it. It's definitely my favorite chapter.
So did you have kids or were you a teacher before? I mean, why do you want to help us out with a devotional? What is the reason for helping everyone out understand Psalms 119? Let's get to that bottom question.
It was my drive to look into this for myself, but then as I was writing it, it was like, this is so good. I've got to write this book. And there's so much that the English does not convey. And I have the gift of teaching, just haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to use it. And then the writing, it all came together.
Well, so Laurie, you said that at least maybe it was implied that the English doesn't give us a full picture of the meaning. So
give us an example of maybe something that showed a fuller meaning through the Hebrew.
The word chesed, or chesed, is spelled chet samet dalet. It means mercy, but it means so much more than that. Chet means fence, samet means vine dresser or prop, and dalet means door. So what I saw was this picture that emerged was chet in John 10. Yeshua says, I am the door to the fence, I am the gate, and he says it twice. And then samet, the vine dresser, John 15, I am the vine, my father is the husbandman. And then dalet, I am the door in John 10 again. But he says it twice, and so there's emphasis there that we really need to stop and look at. So the meaning of mercy, two words that Yeshua personally identifies himself as being. And that's so significant. That was the first time I'd seen that happen in any of the Hebrew words. But there are other words like that or verses that are kind of strange in Psalm 119, and we don't get the meaning. In my book, I said in the introduction, one of the commentaries I used a lot when I got stuck was Charles Spurgeon's Treasury of David. And there were places that, as I was writing, it's like, he's guessing on the meaning because he wasn't looking at the Hebrew in the same way that I was.
Okay, so you'd said that Psalms 119 is a little strange. I think the whole book is a little strange because I don't see any other book in Bible that defines the Aleph Bet, which is the Hebrew alphabet. Every 8 verses or so, we have another letter, right? Yeah. So we have the Aleph, the Bet, the Het. I mean, all that kind of stuff, the Dalet. And then it just goes in line, and every verse starts with that letter, correct?
Correct.
What insight do you have? Why did David do this? Do you have any idea of why he's doing this or some thoughts on that?
I really don't know on that. And for me, the psalm actually does not attribute authorship to David. It's very likely that he wrote it.
Right.
But I wrote it. I just refer to the author as the psalmist because he doesn't identify himself. But there are places throughout the psalm that that are not necessarily apparent but do seem to support different facts in David's life. So it could very well be that he wrote the psalm, but it was just an assumption that I didn't have enough positive truth.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, many of the historians, when they talk about the Psalms, understand that many of the Psalms were written by David, because it would make a statement, Psalm by David or something else. But then there are other titles within the Psalms where it just has meditations and prayers, or heathen idols contrasted with the Lord, or the Psalms of Praise. Those are from other authors, most likely, is what the historians are saying. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, and back to Spurgeon, he says that he had said that the last, so like the authorship of a psalm, the last one would continue throughout. And if that was the case, David did write it. But, it was just one of those things that was a question for me. So, but there do seem to be events in David's life that line up with Psalm 119. But, at the same time, the authorship isn't stated clearly.
That's interesting, Laurie. It makes me dig in and look at Psalm 119 relative to what you're saying, and how, I think back, before I started to come into a Hebraic understanding, it didn't have any relevance to me. Torah, that's just something that the Jewish people did. And it's interesting that in the NIV, and this is how we look at it, but we don't understand it. Even the nearly inspired aspect of this, here's their theme for 119. God's word is true and wonderful. Okay, I agree. Stay true to God. I agree. And his word, no matter how bad the world becomes. Now listen to this. Obedience to God's laws is the only way to achieve real happiness. Yet as a Christian, that didn't sink in.
Yeah, that's right. Rick, you had something to say?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Laurie, are we going to be able to get this book in our bookstore? Are we going to be able to carry it here so those of us that aren't online, we can pick it up?
Absolutely.
Oh, perfect.
I haven't worked out all the details yet with that, but I certainly hope that Hebrew Nation carries the book.
Oh yeah, because I'm really looking forward to getting it, because I love this chapter, all 176 verses of it. And it used to, before I was a Torah observant believer, it was just a long chapter that took a long time, but boy, it just has such significance.
Well, it does. Now. So Laura, I actually want to ask you this question. I'm going to read the first verse from the first chapter. Okay, so we're on Psalms 119:1, and it seems to summarize what's going to happen. And I'm wondering, if you can give us some insight. How blessed are those whose way is blameless, who walk in the law of the Lord. Okay, so how blessed are those whose way is blameless, who walk in the law of Yahweh. So when I'm looking at this, I'm going, wow, are we actually called to be blameless? And am I blameless by walking within this law? I mean, but this seems to be a setup for the whole rest of the chapter. Why don't you give us your insight on this verse, on this very first verse?
That's a good point, and I hadn't considered all of that. But, we are to be undefiled. The King James says undefiled. It says, blessed are the undefiled in the way who walk in the law of the Lord. But so there comes a state of blessedness, and then the next verse is coupled with that. And this is the only time I think I do this in the book. Every other time, I combine those verses when I wrote. But the next verse is, blessed are they that keep his commandments and that seek him with the whole heart. So it's not just that we remain undefiled, because doing nothing can keep you undefiled, but it's also those who pursue and keep and perform his law. And the word blessed was an interesting word. It's actually the word for Asher. And so it's Aleph Shin Resh, the word picture that I got. So from the book, I wrote, I love how this chapter opens by twice declaring a state of blessedness. The first of the Hebrew olive words is Strong's H835 Ashri, which means blessing. In the Strong's Concordance, the word numbered for H833, H839 are all Asher words, seemingly only differentiating from one other vowel point. So there's a nice play on words in Genesis 30:13. Leah said, "Happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed," and she called his name Asher about her son. The word is defined in the Blue Letter Bible as having the following meanings: to go straight on, advance, to lead on, or to set right, and to write and to pronounce happy, called blessed. So there's, obeying the Torah, both obeying it, keeping oneself undefiled, and walking through obedience. There comes a blessing, and the encoded meaning for Asher comes from the letters Aleph, Shin, Resh. Aleph means first, strength, leader, ox; Shin, consuming fire, teeth; Resh, head, exalted man, face; and Yod, hands, create, make, work. So the encoded letter meanings contain the word picture, the strength of the consuming fire of the exalted man. So living in a state of this blessedness is only possible when we are submitted to the one who is capable of setting us right through the purifying power of his consuming fire.
Wow. You know what you're illustrating to me, Laurie, is that as we study it out, there are more and more layers to the onion, so to speak, where we're digging into deeper meaning. It sounds like you're actually studying back into the Paleo-Hebrew at times. Is that true?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Because you're describing way more depth than one word, blessed. Then you go into Asher, and then you break down the letters. That would be an encouragement to everybody, I would think, to dig into those words a little bit more in those letters to understand it.
In the base portion, the verse that starts that is, how does the young man keep his way pure? By obeying your word. The whole purity aspect, yes, it keeps us undefiled from Torah when we pursue purity and keeping ourselves honest and telling the truth. So the home, bait means home. How does a young man keep himself pure? Well, first of all, the answer is through the upbringing in the home. When it's a Torah-observant home, there's going to be that emphasis on God's laws and keeping them, and that keeps one's ways pure.
Which is why we're into Psalms 119 today, because it is probably one of the most blessed chapters within a book that you could ever read, because it gives us hope in this day and age where it seems like there is no hope. And we were blessed this morning. Who did we have on?
Oh, we had Laurie Grooman on, and she wrote a book about Psalm 119. Yep. It's a devotional commentary. I like the phrase that she coined there.
I did too.
Because it gives us a number of different ways to absorb the material, learn about what Father's Word is, and really point us back into reading it ourselves.
Right.